Welcome to Conversation with Community Leader, brought to you by the Leadership Kitsap Foundation. I'm the host, Dave Walters. Today with me, I have Jason Driver, Executive Director of the Kitsap Regional Library. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks,
Thank you
David.
for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So Kitsap Regional Library has 9 locations scattered around Kitsap County. They have over 400,000 books available, as well as online services, and really something for every age. So, Jason, before we dive into all the awesomeness that the library is, where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised, and spent my entire life in Chicago prior to coming to Kitsap County in 2022.
So what was your educational background then?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Chicago. Like I said, I'm a product of Chicago Public Schools. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology from Illinois State University, and then my master's degree in library and information science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in downstate Illinois.
So have you always been working for a library system then?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story, Dave. I ended up getting into libraries by, really chance. I started off working in the human services field. I worked for the Illinois State Department of Children and Family Services coming out of college, and happened to get a part-time job in libraries at the same time. And so this was circa 1993. And what happened is that libraries just kind of stuck on me, and I would eventually leave the library 5 years after I started in 98, and then ended up coming back in 2004, going back to school, getting a master's degree, and decided to make a career out of it. So it's a career change for me, but I found that libraries is the best place to be in terms of a career.
Well, that's outstanding. So how did you actually come to Kitsap County then, right? Because you've been with us now for almost 2 years, you said?
Yeah, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years February 1st. And so it's a journey. I mean, life has been a journey. My library career has had different shapes and forms. And basically what happened is once I got my master's degree, I got a series of promotions in libraries. I really didn't set out to get into management. I really got into management because I like to mentor and coach people. And so really what happened is the last job I had in Chicago was managing a district. And so it was a district chief was my position, and I managed about 15 libraries on the west side of Chicago. And out of that, I got recruited by a firm that was, it was really contacted to hire the next executive director for the Kitsap Regional Library System, as my predecessor, Jill Jean, was retiring in January of 2022. And so had the opportunity to come out here for an interview, and, I loved what I saw. I loved what I heard at Kitsap Regional Library, and I got the job. And so then I had some decision making to do with my wife, and we decided we wanted to change. Libraries is comfortable for me, and I felt like this would be a great system to kind of apply my trade and further develop my leadership skills. And, it's been a dream come true.
I think Jill Jean was 5 years ago was our second guest on Conversation with the Community Leader.
Great.
And at the time, she was talking about what was coming with the library, of course, the new Silverdale Library that opened up just before you got here. So tell us about the library system, right? The website was really interesting because I looked at the calendar for the next couple months, and there's actually, it's all ages, but there was something that caught my eye, that it was between 0 and 18 months. So it's younger than toddlers. You even have services for.
We do.
So you just cover the whole spectrum. So what kind of can you want to summarize some of the services or some of the high points that you have?
David, we'd be here for hours.
That's why I said summarize. That's why I said,
yeah.
Okay, short summary of the big ones.
I'll try to give you a synopsis. And so let's start off with where you left off in terms of the, like pre-toddler ages. Because interestingly enough, I started my library career, working with that population. I was a children's librarian for a number of years. And so, typically story times are broken up into, baby story time, toddler story time, preschool story hour, and so forth and so on. But really, we're proudly, in all libraries, proudly serve, the gamut, right? Birth through death. And so we pride ourselves in being able to serve the entire age range and everybody that comes through the door. So, yeah, you can find a program just about for any age. And so, libraries at the forefront have always been, a place for literacy. And so that's where we develop and grow our youngest library users, and we hope that it continues, on through adulthood.
And the interface with the community has changed over the years, and since you've been in the libraries, for the last almost 20 years.
Yeah, and
15?
fits and starts. So, I'll go a little bit back into that. When I started in '93, again, I was working another full-time job, and so it was just a bit much to have two jobs. So I resigned, and then later I was recruited to come back to Chicago Public Library full-time, and that's how I eventually got on. So all told, it's been about 23 years experience in libraries.
So libraries have right? 23 years ago, didn't really have the internet was new.
The internet was new. I actually remember working in the library when the internet was introduced at Chicago Public Library, and it was just a terminal in sort of the back staff room that we had to practice on with this new technology that at the time we didn't realize that this would be our existence, 20-something years later, that it, certainly is kind of the mode for a lot of users to really use library services. Now, we have a number of users who strictly use our digital space, right? And so what that means is they check out downloadable audiobooks, ebooks, and so forth and so on.
And that's both from home and on site, correct?
Correct. But for those users who are more mobile and more active, and let's face it, society is much more of a, one today that people rely on getting services brought to them. So for those people who, prefer to stay home or on the go, who don't have time to come in and browse, we have a little something for everybody. So the digital library is that space for folks who are on the go, folks who like to take long drives and want to put audiobooks on their, mobile devices. That's a good way to go.
And libraries have kind of found a niche in serving people of need or people struggling with homelessness or not. I know libraries have kind of almost been an outreach for, everything, but that's been something that I know libraries has been focusing on over the years, providing internet service and other things for, say, if you don't have it at home.
Yeah, absolutely. David, we pride ourselves on serving the underserved. So we really serve all facets of the population. But really, I think what was happened interestingly in the pandemic is we found that, our services were really more valuable at the time because libraries, were really one of the only places that were open and available to all users. And so, we found that a lot of people who had needs really found a home in the library. And not that they didn't have a home before, but certainly, yes, we partner with a lot of organizations as well to be able to meet needs that our library staff might not be prepared to use or may not have the training to be able to provide those needs. And so, yes, for people who need to come into the library to have warming or cooling shelters, that's a good place for them. People who are looking for jobs, people who are looking for, various social resources can come to the library. Our information professionals are trained to, deliver that information. Right.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we're a place for everybody. And so we like to, be in all corners of the county to be able to serve our residents.
So with the 9 locations, how many employees and roughly, and how many volunteers do you?
Yeah, so we've got probably about 185 employees right now. Currently, we don't have any volunteers. Volunteers kind of fell off with the pandemic, and so we've really tried to concentrate now on developing our youth. And so interestingly, we're trying to figure out how we can fit volunteers back into the library. We really want to be able to provide opportunities for youth to be able to get various trainings. And so we have a community learning internship program that's been highly successful. So we really kind of focus our efforts there. And then we have a teen volunteer program that we're looking to establish here soon. So we're working with our our teen services librarians to be able to, carve out what that program will look like. We're really interested on youth development and youth mentorship. And so that is also what our community learning internship has done for our youth. It's a really highly impactful program. Youth get a chance to come in and learn about the community, get to learn about transportation, get to learn about, job skills and so forth and so on. They get a chance to shadow a little bit. It's been a highly successful program, and I'm really proud of it.
Oh, that is great. What's some of the biggest challenges for library in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's financial, David. It's like every other organization is struggling with the same thing. We're no different. Some of the financial challenges that have come out of the pandemic have really struck libraries pretty hard, and namely, it's financial resiliency is really where we're at. I mean, We are funded by the property tax levy, and we're very fortunate and grateful for our taxpayers in supporting libraries. Really want to thank all of our taxpayers for doing that. But, without having consistent growth for our revenue, we're really, constrained and we're hamstrung because, the price of doing business has gone up everywhere. You know, the cost of, benefits has gone up, trying to pay our employees competitive wages. We obviously pride ourselves in wanting our employees to, be well taken care of, and we want them. They're fantastic employees. We want them to feel satisfied, and they do a great job for us. And so that will continue to be a challenge in that there's no growth. We're, as my grandmother would say, we're on a fixed income, and so it's really hard. The variance in our budget is very little, and so without, with the 1% property tax cap, it's really difficult for the libraries to really realize any growth in our revenue to match what inflation has done for us. The cost of, even operating our buildings and materials costs, all of those have gone up while our budget has remained relatively flat over the last 10 years. So that will be a continuing challenge for not only Kitsap Regional Libraries, but Kitsap Regional Library, but all libraries and a lot of public institutions in general.
So, right. So the library is its own tax district. So they call them levies. Okay, it's kind of like our school levy. So we have that periodically come up. Is there any other funding revenue source that the library gets to tap into, other than just that tax money?
Not really, and the tax levy accounts for about 96% of our budget. We do realize we get some other funding through grants, very little. We're able to fund some programs through our Kitsap Regional Library Foundation. We're quite fortunate that we have a library foundation that can go out and fundraise and try to fill gaps, and most of those gaps have been in programs. And so we really want to be able to provide programs that you mentioned earlier for the entire county. And so a good example of that is our Summer Learning Challenge, which, all of our residents get to participate in that, not only youth, but in order to, have people participate in those programs, we'd like to provide them with, a lot of different things that, we can sort of promote the program. T-shirts, we like to give away books for those programs and other things. And so we need the foundation to be able to help provide support for that. But about 96% of our budget is accounted for with the tax levy. And then out of that budget, about 85% of that budget is allocated for staffing by way of benefits and salaries. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of money left for collections. It doesn't leave a whole lot of money left for building maintenance and so forth and so on. And so those are the real challenges that libraries are faced with, and our library in particular is faced with.
And some of the the library, Kitsap Library, has kind of a unique relationship with some of the communities, right? You don't own all the buildings.
We don't.
Right? Some of them are. So who owns the physical library buildings on some of them?
So the Kitsap Regional Library owns 2 buildings, and that is our Sylvan Way facility, which is our home office, and which really acts as our central hub and our service center, and also the Pulse Bowl location. So all of our other locations are either owned by friends groups and or the cities that they're in. And so represents a part of a challenge. I mean, obviously with the buildings we own, they are aging, and so there's maintenance costs that are required in that. There's utilities costs in all of our buildings that we have to pay. And so therein lies the challenge of being able to maintain and upgrade those facilities. As libraries change and as people change the way they use libraries, technology becomes one of the biggest factors in trying to keep buildings, upgraded, keep wiring upgraded, technology upgraded. And so our internal building infrastructure is important. And so for a 21st century library, a lot of it relies on, lots of technology. And so for us, it's just a matter of being able to maintain and being able to keep our facilities top notch, because we still have although we have mobile services unit that goes out and we have people who use our digital library, we still have quite a number of users in this county who prefer to come into a library, browse our books, browse our periodicals, sit down and
it's part of the whole experience.
Well, it's the way people have traditionally used libraries. So when you think about your mom and pop's library, that's what it was. It's your basic reader's advisory. It's this notion that there's a book for every reader. You come in, you ask for that bestseller, you ask for that book you just, read a review for in the New York Times, right? And then you're there to get that help, and you're there to use the library. But also, there are people who use libraries in ways that are consistent with how people are using their technology now. We have a mobile app where you can, download those resources on your phone. You can come into a library and not even actually interface with the person. You can look up the information, walk to that aisle, pick up the book or movie or video game or whatever that is, and check it out.
So not mobile phones, but let's talk about your other mobile services. A few details on that, because that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Part of, obviously, major part of your budget, but also one of your major services.
It is. So the mobile services unit is tasked with taking materials out to folks who are not able to get to the library. So good examples of those would be folks who are in assisted care facilities, nursing homes, people who have short-term or long-term disabilities who are at home. Essentially what you do is fill out an application to be able to get that mobile services unit to come out to you. And then that unit is tasked with really curating personal library services for you. So David, if you're an at-home library user and you like, horror movies, you like romance novels, and you like video games, we'll curate a list for you every month, and we'll bring you out a selection that you'll get to keep, and you'll get to trade it in every month. You'll leave a bag at your door, we'll bring a bag out to you. I think one of the ancillary benefits of having a service like that, and I've done a couple of ride-alongs with that service, is that there's a certain human interaction that is a natural part of that service that I think the users really find valuable, especially with the pandemic and not a lot of people being able to have visitors and, be able to have personal contact. One of the things I noticed is that the folks who were getting those services were really relying on not only the actual materials, but the interactions from our mobile services professionals.
So that's interesting. The Meals on Wheels have a very similar
They do.
type discussion about the
Yeah.
side benefits of actually being able to swing by and have that human interaction with maybe someone that's shut in or someone that can't get about. So moving on to leadership. One of the interesting things is a question that I've personally been wanting to ask you. So you came from Chicago to an organization that was healthy and in fact building a new library, the new CK library, near the high school or in partnership with the high school. How do you come into an organization that you're kind of the outsider, but you're coming in as the boss? How do you transition that? What kind of strategy do you use for coming in and into taking over an organization?
Yeah, a lot of listening.
Tough question, but
It is a tough question, but one that I've had to live through, so I've got an answer. And part of that was, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Jill Jean. She was a long-term director at Kitsap Regional Library for 15 years. So at least following the template that she set up was, really the easiest way to go. And, I believe in leadership. As a new leader, you don't make a lot of changes at first. I think it's important to kind of assess the pulse of the organization, get some feedback from your leaders, get some feedback from, your employees as to what's needed, what's happened in the organization, what the history has been like, and, what are some of the things that they might want to see happen in the organization. And so a lot of it was just relying on my leadership team who had already been there and who already had the experience. And also understanding that they're capable and tooled leaders who have the ability to lead. It's about really just kind of pushing, that leadership down, because those folks are well equipped to do their jobs. And so for me, it's a balance between not wanting to interfere too much, but also wanting to, kind of assess where I needed to insert myself. And so I think it comes with time. As you go, you feel more comfortable leading, you feel more comfortable directing an organization. Even though I know libraries and know what they do and how to run them, coming to a different library system in a different county, a different city, a whole new geographic region, that presented a number of challenges. Probably cultural challenges for me, just because the way the business was run here is a lot different than how it was run in Chicago. So my philosophy is really just to do a lot of listening and figuring out how I can fit in and, kind of insert myself where I need be, and I feel more comfortable doing that now.
Did you have a mentor yourself as a leader back in Chicago? And then how do you do your mentoring and develop your people here in Kitsap?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I had one particular mentor. My philosophy is really gleaned from watching people. As I talked about earlier, I had a psychology degree. And how that really came about is I had a psychology class in high school from Miss Weiss, my high school psychology teacher. Very impactful teachers. I always talk about the impact that teachers make in your life. And for those educators out there, this is really a shout out to them. You do make a difference. Miss Weiss really gave me this yearning for just kind of more knowledge about that field. I became fascinated with the human condition, how people think, how people behave, and so decided to study that more when I went to college. And so really, I think my professional leadership style is really gleaned from watching people and kind of, absorbing those attributes that I think are, would work and that I think that, are good to implement. And then the things that maybe I feel like I'm not comfortable with, just cast those things aside. And I try to do that with everything and try to absorb those into my own ideas and kind of melt them. And that's how I really developed my leadership style. And then over the course of my career, I've talked to people who've held positions that I might have wanted to see myself in to truly get feedback on how they've done their jobs. And so even when I took this job, I called like 3 different library directors that I knew and asked them, hey, I'm coming into this job. What do I do first 30, 60, 90 days? What kind of advice can you give me? And just try to take all that
Willingness
feedback.
to be vulnerable and seek advice.
And that's a good point, David. Vulnerability, I think, is key because you can't pretend you can't transmit something you don't have. And so I think my best message for anyone in that is going into leadership is just to be yourself, because people know when you're being phony. People know when you don't have the answers, and people know when you just don't know what you're doing. So it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, I don't know. I think those are the strongest leaders, are those who can be vulnerable, those who can say, I don't know what I'm doing, and can you help me out? And that's a very admirable attribute, I believe.
So one question I have to ask you, being the librarian, what books do you recommend for our viewers to develop themselves, develop their leadership? What books do you recommend?
You're going to be disappointed because I'm not going to necessarily give you any specific books. What I'm going to tell you is that what I like to do is, I'm a reader that reads, I could read 10 different books at one time, right? And so I don't really look to leadership books to necessarily give me the direction that I want, because I don't gravitate to a particular leadership style. And so for me, I look for more books to develop myself. And I think the more I develop myself and I become a better person, I become a better leader. So in terms of you can name a bunch of different leaders. I like Simon Sinek. He's got, a couple of good books, Brene Brown, John Maxwell, all good leaders. I would recommend anybody to read those books. Even Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, books like that. I actually like Mandino, and for the reason that he really focuses on sort of that inner self and developing connection to other human beings and really being able to improve upon yourself. And so I think those are the books that are most helpful for me, because I have to look more internally at what I'm doing and how I'm receiving people and how I view people. And that helps me turn inward in order to figure out how I can
Far from a
it.
disappointing answer, by the way.
No, but it's not one book, because I feel like all those books are packaged the same way. They kind of give you the same answer in about 60 different ways. And so as you read most of those books, even with self-help books, they all sort of give you the same message, but they package them in different ways. So I'm a firm believer in really improving upon myself and how I view society, and kind of looking at all those things that I need to work on in my life.
One more quick question,
Yeah.
book related. What are you reading for fun right now? What's on Jason Driver's nightstand?
A lot. I'm reading a book now about, actually I was reading a book about Ecuador, because my mother lives in Ecuador now. She's retired and she lives in Ecuador. So a lot of what I'll read will be trying to read what my kids are reading, or reading things to educate them or give them more information. So they spent a whole summer in Ecuador. So I decided to check out a book on Ecuador. It's one of these country books you can check out. From the library. So as a library director, I'm a avid library user. And so I check out a number of books. And so I've got a book on Ecuador that we've been reading, interesting facts about the place that they just went to.
Oh, that is great. So I'd like to thank you for all the amazing things that the library provides to from infants to end of life. Cover everybody.
Yes.
So I'd like to thank you for all that. It's my pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you very much for coming. Please visit the 9 library locations. They are in Paulsbo, Little Boston, Silverdale, Bainbridge Island, Manchester, Bremerton, 2 Bremerton offices.
Yes.
Oh no.
I'm not going to help you.
I had the list great this morning.
Port Orchard
Port Orchard
and Kingston.
And Kingston.
There you go.
And Kingston.
And we've got a mobile services unit that has a van, and you should be seeing that out in the streets.
So please visit Jason's 9 library locations, as well as krl.org and the leadershipkitsap.org for more information. And I look forward to the next episode, A Conversation with a Community Leader.